We have talked about a bunch of teams here, but apparently this is the team everybody's been waiting for. 32 teams and 32 shows continues with the Minnesota Vikings.
Oh, yeah! Minnesota Vikings time! 32 teams, 20-something shows. This is for Ryan today, our fan out there who requested the Vikings.
Kevin O'Connell in year one for him. He comes over after serving as the offensive coordinator for the Rams the last couple of seasons. Wes Phillips is the offensive coordinator. He comes over for the Rams as well. He was the tight ends coach as well as the passing game coordinator for them. And then Ed Donatel comes in to be the defensive coordinator. He spent the last 3 seasons over with the Broncos. So we have a complete overhaul here of the coaching staff, Wes. And I know that if you're a Vikings fan far and wide, you were certainly super happy about this. You were tired of the way that Zimmer was coaching this team. You were tired of how conservative he got whenever they got a lead in games. In a passing league like we're in right now, you can't sit on 10-point leads because they will evaporate very, very quickly. And that happened to this Vikings team several different times last season. And you just look at, they played 10 games decided by one score. They only won 6 of them, and in 3 of the other 4 they lost, they had the leads in the games that they ended up losing. And so it's just, this team could have been much, much better than they were. They could have finished much, much higher than they did, but it was just, in my opinion, almost malpractice with the way that Zimmer coached this team, because the way those guys went out and got these leads and how he would just sit on them in today's NFL was it deserved, in my opinion, to have him out of there.
Well, and the fact that they did that, and look, when you look at the Vikings stats, I think they were like 17th, like middle of the pack in the league in terms of average rushing yards. A lot of that was because Dalvin Cook was not available for every game during the season. So he only played 13 games. So it's like you're still doing that, even when you're without one of the best running backs in the National Football League. And he only played and started 13 games. So you just look at Minnesota, and I think you really hit it right there. They lost a lot of close games last year, and really they should have put it away. And look, Kirk Cousins, now Zimmer obviously got the blame because he got the boot, but I feel like Kirk Cousins gets like a lot of the blame, when things don't go exactly right. Kirk Cousins has been good in Minnesota.
Kirk Cousins has been a good quarterback. And listen, there are a bunch of people who just point to the salary that he makes and say, like, well, he's not worth that, blah, 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 blah. Well, look, there are 20 other NFL teams who'd like to have Kirk Cousins as their starting quarterback.
And there might be some teams that have a chance next year, by the way, because this is a contract year. But just to kind of put a cap on what you were talking about, look at how many close games they lost. They lost 24-27 in that opener against Cincinnati. I think they had like 20-some penalties, if I remember, in week 1, and like half of them were holding penalties. So the offensive line put them in jail. They lost that field goal at the end against Arizona. So you could kind of see where that season was going last year. They lost so many close ones. The game to Dallas when I don't even think Dak went. Who was the starter for Dallas? If I'm trying to remember, but it was a backup guy, and they went up there and got
Cooper Rush.
Cooper Rush, yeah, he was the starter, the former guy of Central Michigan. He was the starter for Dallas. They beat Minnesota up there in a close game. They lost to Baltimore in overtime, lost to Detroit. And that really, I think, is what eventually was going to seal Zimmer's fate. He made it to the end of the season. But now a new start. Kevin O'Connell, a true offensive guy, finally for Kirk Cousins up there in Minnesota.
And to your point about Cousins, I mean, again, kind of under the radar probably to most people. Now, Pro Football Focus is not the end-all, be-all to everything, but they watch every single play of every single game and grade out players for every single play of every single game. Kirk Cousins rated out at an 88.2, which was 6th out of 37 qualifying quarterbacks last year. So the 6th best rating in at the entire position, Wes. So, I mean, again, you're right. He does tend to catch a lot of flack, and he seems to be the fall guy for whatever reason, but it doesn't add up with what everybody else is seeing on the field.
Yeah, I'm just racking up even the touchdown interception ratio. Since he got to Minnesota, 124 touchdowns to 36 interceptions over 4 seasons. That is dang good for an NFL quarterback. You're right, Matt. This guy catches a lot of unfair heat.
So if you look what they did in free agency here, some big signings for them on the defensive side of the ball, namely Za'Darius Smith, Harrison Phillips, and Jordan Hicks. So Za'Darius Smith's going to come in as an edge rusher, coming in from down, from down the street in the division there. With, Severino, did he just give it back-to-back home runs?
He did. Farmer, Moustakas, and Fairchild. Back-to-back jacks here in the top of the second. It is 4-0 Cincinnati Reds.
Well, Kelley, good thing that we were on Reds money line first five. Run line first five.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, good thing we were on Reds run line first five. That probably paid a pretty penny, that's for sure. Harrison Phillips going to come in, give them some help on that interior defensive line, and then, as we mentioned, Jordan Hicks at the linebacker position. They also signed a right tackle in Jesse Davis. Cornerback Chandon Sullivan comes in, and then Chris Reed for some depth on the offensive line. They didn't only take in players, though. They did lose some players. Defensive lineman Michael Pierce is gone. Safety Xavier Woods is gone. Linebacker Nick Vigil is gone. Center Mason Cole also out the door, and then Tyler Conklin is no longer going to be there either. So they, listen, I really do like what they did as far as free agency on the defensive side of the ball, because the thing was about Minnesota, it never really was the offense so much. It was the defense. And so they really needed to go. So you bring in a Za'Darius Smith, you bring in a Harrison Phillips, you bring in a Jordan Hicks. So you're really trying to shore up where you were most deficient.
Mm-hmm.
And then they address some stuff in the draft as well. So they go in, first round pick, take a safety Lewis Sign, they take a corner in Andrew Booth, they take an offensive guard with the second round in Ed Ingram, and then they go right back to the defensive side of the ball again, linebacker in the third round. So they go safety, corner, linebacker with 3 of their first picks in the draft. So again, addressing the deficiencies of the team.
Yeah, because they couldn't cover anybody last year. They could get pressure on the quarterback, by the way. They were second in the league in terms of sacks. So, I don't think defensive line necessarily is the problem up front, but when you can't cover in this league and you're in that division, you still have Aaron Rodgers, albeit with a decreased talent level in receivers. That's still what you have to address. But I think both you and I are kind of bullish on this team this year.
Definitely so. You look here, even with the 4th and 5th round pick, a corner and a defensive end. Now, these guys are probably just depth guys. These guys are, maybe even practice squad guys, but you can just see what the emphasis was for this team. It was defense, because they knew where they needed to really get things shored up here. We'll take a look at what Football Outsiders thought of this team last year from the advanced metrics, and then we'll look forward and see what the strength of schedule looks like, how many projected wins do they have, and what does Pro Football Focus think about all of the different positional units here for the Minnesota Vikings. On the other side, coming back here on Primetime Action. All right, let's go ahead and continue on here with the Minnesota Vikings. Football Outsiders looked at this team basically just dead center in the middle of the pack and everything. 16th overall DVOA, 16th offense, 16th defense, and 13th special teams. So it was just a middle-of-the-road team through and through by the advanced metrics
and
there.
I think that they saw that up there in Minnesota, and that's why Ziggy Wolf elected to make the change.
So if you look at this offense, and one of the things you mentioned is they do get a true offensive guy in there in O'Connell, which I think if you are a Vikings fan is going to be a welcome change here, because this is courtesy of Warren Sharp's new football preview that just came out a couple of days ago. They only used 11 personnel on 33.7% of passing snaps, which was dead last in the NFL. The Browns were second to last in 11 personnel in passing downs at 45.5%. In the NFL average was 69%. So you had a team that, one, wanted to run the ball first anyway, and then two, when they did pass, ran out like heavy packages and jumbo packages and stuff like that to pass out of, as opposed to what the rest of the league was doing 69% of the time. You did 33.7% of the time, and you kind of wonder why things ended up the way they did.
So apparently nobody told that previous regime that they have Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen, and they have a very good receiving core, good tight ends, running backs that can catch the ball out of the backfield. So like you said, offense really wasn't the problem for this team. It was absolutely defense. But offense, I guess, is the problem when you're not using your personnel the right way nor calling the right plays. I expect that to be a massive upgrade this year with O'Connell and Phillips.
On the defensive side of the ball, as we said, they were 16th overall DVOA, but they're likely to have 5 new starters, and I think that's actually a good thing for this defense. So, again, probably 5 new guys in there for them. Again, if you were looking at if we're keeping with the dead center kind of middle of the road, that's where their schedule comes in as well. 16th ranked schedule in the NFL as we head in. So not harder than anybody else, not easier than anybody else, just kind of dead center right there. 8.7 projected wins according to Warren Sharp over there at Sharp Football. So if we kind of look at the way that the schedule pans out for this team, Wes, I'm I am still more bullish on this team than I am on the Packers. So I'm not I'm not looking at this and looking at the schedule and saying, oh, hey, that's two losses. Like in years past, maybe you could do that. I'm not doing that with this team. And so I think I'm a little bit more optimistic about how the schedule might play out for them. And especially here, you get the Packers in week 1, right? So will there be enough time for Aaron Rodgers to adjust to this new receiving core?
And that's a big statement game for a new regime that wants to get off to a good start, as you said. So Green Bay at home, then they go to Philadelphia, what I think the market believes, and we all believed at least is going to be a slightly improved at the bare minimum Philadelphia team. Detroit at home, then you get New Orleans at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium over there in London, and then Chicago at home and at Miami. So before that bye week, that's a manageable schedule. If they don't go 4-2 or better, I think that would be disappointing. And like you said about this team, higher than them on the Packers, that's why I bet them to win the division. I think they are going to win the NFC North. And I like the fact that Kirk Cousins, who I still think is in his prime and has 1 year left on his deal, wants to have a big year. He's going to be chomping at the bit to work with the guy that just won the Super Bowl, and Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips. So I think he's going to be very happy. And then you look even after the bye week at Arizona at home, at Washington. Those are games they should probably be favored in both of those games before they have to go to Buffalo in November. So yeah, this schedule, it doesn't look all that daunting. Obviously, there's a few losses on there, but
that week 4 game actually is one of the overseas games, so that's not actually down in New Orleans. At
Tottenham Hotspur
at the Dome. So you're looking there and you're going, okay, so easy-ish landing spot with the Lions in week 3. Yes, you have to travel to go to the Saints, but then you come back home to what everyone considers to be kind of an easy-ish landing spot as well in the Bears, because Bears super projected to be pretty bad this coming season as well. So if you aren't going to take your bye, which they chose not to after they go overseas, coming home to a home game against the Bears is one of the better ways to do it anyway.
Yeah, I think so, because you look at what really surrounds this schedule, a road trip to Miami. Miami obviously is not one of the bigger home field advantages in the league. So going on the road, like when you're doing your power ratings and rating home field advantage, Miami isn't going to be very high. So, whenever you think you're going down there against a team that's kind of like a middle-of-the-road team, which I would think the Miami Dolphins are, that's a winnable game. Arizona's a winnable game. Washington certainly is a winnable game. You go to Buffalo, that's probably you're taking an L there, and then you get Dallas and New England at home. Dallas, a payback game, a game you should have won last year, and having a New England team that a lot of people think are going to be down. Then the Jets, you get 3 of those home games in a row. There's a lot of potential for Minnesota.
There really is. I think this is one of those, Kelley, that I will write down as a potential alt over team.
Oh yeah, I already wrote down. So I think we all have division bets, and I've already written. I want to see when Circle releases them, what their prices are before I go bet these alt win totals. But I think I'm going to go alt over on the Vikings and alt under on the Packers, just because they kind of correlate. But yeah, I think for the Vikings, there's so many of these kind of coin flip games that they just have to win, right? This is the definition of a team, kind of that team taking that next step. Go into Philly, beat the Eagles, right? Go down to Miami, beat the Dolphins. I think, Wes, you're right. No home field advantage there whatsoever. The only problem, the biggest home field advantage the Dolphins have is the heat. You are going down there kind of in early October.
Yeah, it's
an
still
early
humid
game.
down there.
It's an early
Good
game.
point.
But you beat the Cardinals, you beat the Cowboys. If they're able to win more of those games than lose those games, like this team's really dangerous this year.
Yeah, so they definitely seems like an alt over team for me. On the positional unit side of things, it's 19th rated offensive line, and that really could be much, much higher if Christian Darrisaw continues to progress at left tackle. He actually was much, much better as a run blocker than he was a pass blocker last year. He was a 77.3 as a run blocker, but a 63.1 as a pass blocker. So if he can increase that, then this offensive line with Cleveland and Bradbury, Ingram, and O'Neal certainly could be much better than even the 19th rated unit that they are as we enter the season. The running back room is one of the best duos you're going to find. And between Dalvin Cook and Alexander Madison would start for 75% of the other teams in the league. So you've got one of the best running back duos there is.
And I like some of the depth they added to receiver. I know this guy was a 6th-round pick. He actually is out from here in Las Vegas. Jalen Naylor, who played at Michigan State, maybe a little bit of value, a guy that could be kind of a sleeper, but that starting receiving group too, one of the better ones too. I think with Jefferson, Thielen, and KJ Osborne.
Yeah, Jefferson, a legit stud, right? I mean, led all receivers last season against press coverage, and again, is one of the guys that everybody thinks this could be the season where he actually just puts up monster numbers, because this is the true changing of the guard, where Thielen is no longer the number one at all, right? Like, it is Justin Jefferson's team now, and Thielen is the clear number 2. So could put up just absolute monster numbers there. And as you mentioned, they picked up Albert Wilson as well. And then Irv Smith, is he ever going to blossom at that tight end position? We'll see. Defensive line, as you mentioned, unbelievably awesome, so long as they can stay healthy. Danielle Hunter, Za'Darius Smith is about as good as you're going to get as far as edge rushers go. If you date back to their height at 2019, Za'Darius Smith had 93 quarterback pressures. Hunter had 88. That was first and second in the NFL. Right? So if you can just get them back to that, you're going to have one of the most dominant defensive lines there is. Really, it's just question mark's going to be in that secondary, because Patrick Peterson's 32 years old now. Harrison Smith is 33 years old now. And then they're going to start 2 rookies, So it's like, it's 2 old guys and 2 rookies.
Yeah.
So how is that going to work out? Hopefully Peterson and Smith don't fall off a cliff or anything like that, and the 2 rookies can be serviceable. And I like the upside for this team. I think it's going to be, I already have them in the division, looking for an upside as well.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.